So I work at Nojitsu, and I do JavaScript meetups, but back in Krakow, where I live. So that's a quick introduction about me. So as you already noticed, my talk will be about simplicity. So I'm a designer, but I started to shift towards front-end development, JavaScript development, Node as well. We all strive for simplicity, but we don't necessarily know what it is and how to define it. So who can tell me what simplicity is? Anyone? Not a single person here? Okay, come on. Okay, you? Can't hear you, you need to speak up louder. Huh. Anyone else? Yeah, that's really close to my definition. Do you want to say something? Yeah. So you can see that everyone has a different understanding and for simplicity, right? So we are trying to achieve simplicity, but we all have different meaning for it. For me, as a designer, as a developer as well, simplicity is achieving goals as quickly and as easily as it is possible. So you are subtracting the obvious and necessary things and leaving only the meaningful stuff. You can say that simplicity equals focus then. But we are all kind of experts at making our lives harder, both personal lives and developer lives. So experiences we are creating may be less appealing because of that. The outcome of complicating things may not be visible. It may not be the interface, it may not be the code which you can view, it may be something hidden somewhere under the hood, which results in poor performance, usability issues, and other significant stuff crucial for your users, right? A week ago, there was an awesome conference in Lisbon, and it wasn't LX.js, it was Refresh LX. And that's a really good quote from this conference. We often talk about pursuing simplicity to reduce complexity, but complexity is quite valuable. So it doesn't mean that we should simplify experiences in means of removing features, because it can be very confusing for the user. Complex and sophisticated solutions are also in demand. So we should think about designing and writing, for example, writing code, because most of you are developers, not designers. So you should think about writing quality code at first, not rewriting it later. You all probably heard about DRAWBACKS redoing their JavaScript to CoffeeScript. And it has been kind of a flame and debate and comments under the post, because everyone was saying like, oh, you did CoffeeScript, awesome, but on the other hand, your JavaScript sucks. And that's the point, because they went with, they had a justification for their choice, why they did CoffeeScript. But on the other hand, they could achieve the same thing with just doing really quality JavaScript. That goes to the conclusion that we shouldn't be a slave of our tools, because we have so many tools available. Like open source is awesome. We have GitHub. We can solve all issues. But only if we have good justification for the tools. We need to have good reasoning to be using the tools we are using. So we have a lot of tools, right? We have frameworks. Who's using framework for anything during the development? Yeah, right. That's what I thought. So frameworks are awesome. They're simplifying our lives. Development process is easier and more efficient. We have good practices involved in the code because it's created by seasoned, well-known developers, like, for example, Paul Irish. Common issues are addressed, like we have resets, we have normalized, we have some specific hacks for browsers. So these are all really like awesome tools we have. But on the other hand, do we really think about how we are using them? Do we really are aware of the fact what we are actually doing with them? So the questions I'm asking myself when I'm starting a project and I'm trying to choose a right tool for the job, is it necessary for me to use a framework? Is it necessary, like, does it have every feature I need? Does it affect performance? Should I write my own? Or should I use one of the frameworks which are already written? Frameworks are not substitute for thinking. This is, you couldn't go more true. You need to always justify your decisions. You need to use tools and use your brain when you're doing that. The fact that it's ready-made for you doesn't mean that you shouldn't have any considerations, because it's already tested and it's so awesome, so I don't need to think. I just only need to like download this code and just take it to my project, and that will work. So you all heard about Bootstrap. There's some other foundations as other frameworks, Foundation, HTML5 boilerplate, and they're all awesome. At Alex.js, a friend of mine, Jay Chris, did a really good comparison about Bootstrap. He said, Bootstrap is the new Drupal. And I'm not trying to troll Bootstrap, but the thing is that Bootstrap is the most started repository on GitHub. So it's like the most popular project. Notice right after Bootstrap. And when you go and try to read Bootstrap's code, it's over 6,000 lines of code. This is madness. So I know that many developers are using Bootstrap because it's so easy. I don't know how to design, and Bootstrap is so nice, so I'll just download the library, the framework, and I will just use it. But there are some drawbacks over here when you're using a framework, not necessarily Bootstrap. There's the problem of being semantic, because frameworks are usually based on grids. So you have a lot of divs, a lot of spans, and all other elements. But on the other hand, we have HTML5, and we should be using native HTML5 elements, which are holding actual semantic value, right? We want semantic in our code. So we are stuck with a bunch of divs or spans with unsemantic naming, such as column 1, column 2, something, which are common for grids. And that's just the solution for it. So how you can address this issue? You can add area roles, which are kind of a really neglected specification from W3C. So you can attach an attribute, a role, to a div and say, oh, so that's a navigation. And then it adds more meaning to the code you are writing. Think about working in a distributed or a large team. So someone is downloading your code, looking at it, and he's not exactly sure what is going on. There's a lot of divs. I don't know what to do. But then you can add, of course, comments. You can add divs. You can add roles, and then it will be more clear. And roles are especially important if you're dealing with people with various disabilities. Like, imagine having to hear a screen reader reading a website, doing which is prepared in Foundation or Bootstrap, which is not kind of semantic. Also, another problem is learning curve. You all are seasoned developers, probably. So you are kind of familiar with code. But then you are downloading this framework. So you need to take a little bit of time to familiarize yourself with it. You need to probably read the documentation a little bit. You need to go through code to make sure that you're not going to erase something because you wanted to modify something. So it all takes time. And it makes sense to familiarize yourself with a framework if you're planning to use it a couple of times, right? Because otherwise you're just wasting time. So frameworks are useful for speeding up the development processes only once you learn them. Another problem or consideration is CSS style sheets, because we are overriding them or overriding them. I've seen developers who are downloading a framework and they're taking the CSS and then they're just modifying it because I don't like how Foundation looks. So I will just, ooh, watch out. So they're just like, okay, I will just modify the settings because I don't like the blue color and all of that. But then you need to manage updates. So how are you going to manage updates of the framework itself if you already modified the styles, right? I mean, we have Git and GitHub, but on the other hand, it's kind of time consuming. We can also create another style sheet, but then you have another HTTP request. So you have all these considerations if it comes to styling itself. And there's the weight of the code. We all strive for, especially in the age of mobile, we strive for really lightweight code. But we are using a framework which is a little bit, let's say they are mostly lightweight, but you have additional stuff. So you need to think what I should do to optimize the code, right? You need to minify the code. You need to think how to minimize the HTTP requests. So it's like another consideration you need to have in mind when you're using a framework. So these are bad things, but there are advantages, and I mentioned some of them already. There's the faster development because of reduced testing time, because of functional working code snippets or widgets you have. And you, of course, you don't need to write it yourself, so that's how fast it can get, right? Also, testing is very easy. It's community driven because of GitHub. It's tested by so many people. You have GitHub issues, you have Stack Overflow. It's tested by the authors, which are usually awesome seasoned developers. It's reduced time for bug fixing, but it's still very hard to test on mobile. That's when you should go to local mobile testing lab, which is a new idea brought by Jeremy Keefe, and it's getting more and more popular. I don't know if there's one in Berlin yet, but I know there is a website with a list of local mobile testing labs. So it's getting really easy. And it's beginner friendly. Another thing is libraries. Frameworks are really, really big chunks of code, but libraries are designed to perform a single action or solve a specific problem. But most of them were never designed to work together. There's just like a separate piece of code. Worst case of copy-pasting as so going on around the web, my answer is jQuery. That's from PPK, and I guess that you all know who PPK is. He did a huge survey on jQuery and JavaScript and other JavaScript libraries. It got over 80K of responses. 80% said that they're using jQuery in more than 50% projects. Who is using jQuery here? Whoa, that's cool. And 60% said that they could solve an issue with their own code, but they were using jQuery instead. So who here is aware that he could write plain JavaScript, but he chose jQuery over it? Okay, that's better. And more than 50 people said that every project they're creating is using a library. The thing about jQuery, and I will elaborate about it more at JSConf, is that nowadays document query selector can solve most of the use cases for jQuery. The same for CSS animations, because that's when you are using jQuery, right? For animating stuff and for searching and selecting elements within the DOM. So now you have all these tools which are native and faster, which you can use. Query selector all has 93% support right now in all modern browsers. So, and it works on mobile too, and it's deadly fast. So it's way faster than jQuery. And CSS animations, maybe they are not as performant and as awesome as jQuery, but in some use cases, they're just perfect. So jQuery was meant to solve cross-browser issues, and it was made for desktop, not mobile. It's better to use native stuff such as CSS or plain JavaScript rather than turning on to jQuery or the JavaScript library. The next thing I've seen developers use, and it's kind of weird to me, is code generators, such as like CSS Free Please, Colorzilla, or like they're surfaced right after CSS Free was announced. they're kind of a really dangerous thing because developers, for example, don't know or don't remember the specification for gradients. And okay, so they're going to the website and it generates the gradient for them. Awesome. But on the other hand, there are really some dangerous things that can happen during that process. There can be no shorthand variants, for example. The specification may be not the latest from W3C. It may not be optimized. There might be unnecessary vendor prefixes. And sometimes all of these things can be replaced with the simple code handling in the editor, right? But I've seen people doing that, so that's really, really bad practice. If you're not using it with caution, of course. And the last thing is preprocessing. Who's using preprocessors for development? That's not a lot, that's surprising. Okay, so we have less SAS, stylus, RCSS, and other. The advantage of using a preprocessor is having mixins, variables, and other really cool features we wish we had in the CSS, and some of them are coming to CSS, such as variables. This is less to write, easier and faster to maintain, and it compiles to pure CSS anyway, so I don't care, right? On the other hand, it's really hard to debug. Imagine yourself sitting there and just trying, where was that line? Oh my god, this is crazy. I need to search for all projects. I've been there with stylus, and it's really hard. On the other hand, we have source maps. Source maps are fairly new, but you can use them with CoffeeScript already. So they're basically a way to map the unminified code to minified code. So you can basically, if you're working with CoffeeScript, you can go to the browser, you are seeing JavaScript, but on the other hand, you can see the map where the line is in CoffeeScript file. So it's really awesome. You can debug SAS in the future, of course, because now it's working only for CoffeeScript. For SAS and less, in the meantime, you can use Fire SAS or SAS Inspector. These are plugins for Firebug or Chrome. They're kind of buggy, but they will do the job. So this is all awesome stuff about preprocessing. It's really helpful, and to be honest, I couldn't imagine writing plain CSS right now. But on the other hand, the time you're wasting on debugging it makes it kind of pointless to use a preprocessor, because if you write the plain CSS, then you can just debug really easily. So how we can avoid these issues? How can we improve? Well, just avoid the hype club, because when you look at it, it is kind of a hype. So there's this library. Oh, have you heard about this library or this like new open source project on GitHub? It's so awesome. Have you heard about it? We need to use it for our new project with our new client. And on one hand, it's good, but it's overexcitement with new technologies. That was what happened with HTML5 and CSS3 a little bit when it surfaced. It means that you need to stop overusing all cool effects without any reasoning behind it. You need to stop and think, oh yeah, but what exactly I'm doing? Why am I doing it? Can I use something else instead? Is it the best solution for my use case? Should I be writing my own code, or should I be just using this code from GitHub or anywhere else? Will it affect the optimization? Will it affect the user experience? Will it affect anything considering me, my friends at my team, and users? Another thing is to remember that beautiful not necessarily equals usable. Also, it's not only a rule for design, also for development. Because if you think about heavyweight designs, you could probably assume that they are not serving the purpose, but think about Amazon. Everyone is buying stuff on Amazon, right? But the website is kind of terrible. It's so cluttered, but it serves the purpose so in such a great way. It's really easy to buy stuff on Amazon, actually, but the experience itself is kind of crappy. And it applies to code also, because the less lines you have, it doesn't count for goodness or superiority of your code. I think you can apply it to the old CoffeeScript discussion there is going on. Also, simplicity does not equal minimalism. These are two different things. Minimalism can be understood as getting rid of features, but getting rid of features can be very, very confusing for the end user. It must be simple in terms of usage. You can actually define simplicity as how many steps you need to take to achieve a goal or complete the action. And last but not least, don't overdo it. Thank you. Question time.
Any questions? There's one question.
Thanks. Well, you said avoid the hype club.
Yeah.
And I think, in my opinion, I do disagree a little bit on the statement, because it is true if it's hype, because it's hype. If the hype has no substance. But Node.js, for example, is hyped as well, and it has substance, in my opinion. So in my personal opinion, I'd rewrite it as avoid the hype club if there's no substance. If it has substance, go for the hype. What do you think of this?
That's all the premise of the talk, that you need to think about the decisions you are making. So if the hype is justified, just go for it. Otherwise, if it's hype only, it's not worth it. As long as you are justifying your decisions and thinking why it's important to use the tool you are using, you will be fine.
Anyone else? Okay. Then who of you have heard of Nodecopter? She did the design for the website. Thank you again.
Thanks.